Most people consume content about growth and never actually grow. They read the posts, they watch the videos, they collect the motivation, and then go back to the same life. The same patterns, same excuses, same version of themselves. And this isn't it. The MindForge podcast exists for people who are serious about the mental work, the discipline, the identity, the hard internal stuff that nobody talks about honestly. And this podcast exists to go even deeper. Every episode, we take what's on the page and we crack it open. The stories behind it, the science underneath it, the application you can actually use. If you're looking for hype, you're in the wrong place. If you're looking to be challenged, to think harder, to leave every episode a little more clear on who you're becoming and what it's going to take, you're exactly where you need to be. I'm Caden Floyd. This is MindForge Podcast, brought to you by Warrior X Training. Let's get to work. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the MindForge Podcast. This is episode 12. I'm your host, Caden Floyd, and today we're sitting with something I don't think we sit with enough, which is the difference between chasing motion and chasing meaning. Now, I wrote about this quote on the blog a little while ago, before this podcast even existed. So today, I want to bring you through what I said back then and then go somewhere deeper with it today, because the more that I've lived with this idea, the more it stopped being a nice thought and really started being something I have to actually confront in myself. So I wear a necklace every day. It's a little barbell plate that you find at a gym, and in really teeny tiny letters, it says, "When you feel like quitting, remember why you started." And now most days, it's really just something around my neck. But every so often, it does stop me, and I actually really have to sit with what it says, and that's the reason why I got it. But lately, sitting with it has made me really ask myself a harder question than usual. Not just why did I start, but am I even still moving toward that? Or have I just been moving? And I think a lot of us are just moving. Genuinely working, genuinely busy. And I don't think most of us have actually stopped long enough to ask ourselves if any of it is really going anywhere. I didn't come to this idea on some quiet mountaintop, though. I came to it in a much smaller, dumber moment in my life. I remember I was scrolling on my phone at like midnight. I was watching someone that I don't even know narrate their own day in the life. Perfect morning routine, perfect gym session, perfect business update. And I remember feeling like this weird feeling inside. Not really of jealousy exactly, but like pressure. Like I was already behind on a race that I never agreed to really run. And so I remember putting my phone down, and I just sat there for a second. And the question that came up wasn't, how do I get to what they have? It was, why am I doing any of what I'm doing? Why am I doing any of this? And that's the question that gets very quickly buried in our minds, especially when everything is online, all the stuff that we see online. It's an image of success everywhere that we look. The car, the house, the trip, the routine. And it just really starts to feel like there's this formula. Like if we just followed enough steps, posted enough updates, we optimized enough of the day, we'd end up there too. But the more that I've watched people who actually get something real and somewhere real, the more I've noticed they weren't following anybody else's formula at all. They'd done something quieter than that. They'd sat with themselves long enough to know what they actually wanted and who they actually wanted to become. And without that, it is so easy to fill our days with motion and still feel like we're not anywhere. Busy, updated, visible, but still lost. I call it chasing smoke back when I first wrote this, because that's what it really feels like. You look like you're moving forward, but something in you knows that you're scattered. Something in you knows it's not real. So here's what I've been sitting with more recently, and it's a little harder to say out loud, but we're going to do it anyways. Everything about how we live right now is built for speed. Fast content, fast results, fast money. And we've been taught, without anyone ever saying it directly, that if something isn't happening quickly, you're doing it wrong. And I don't think that's true. I think it might actually be the opposite. I think who we actually become, our character, our depth, the parts of us that don't disappear when things get hard, none of that comes fast. It gets built slowly, quietly, and through the parts of our lives that don't look impressive from the outside. That's what motion really is, if I'm honest. It's us trying to get the result without living through the time it actually takes. And meaning is the opposite of that. Meaning is what's left after we stop trying to rush and just let something take as long as it needs to take. I think a lot of us have traded something without noticing. We've traded actually sticking with something for the promise of a shortcut that gets us the same result faster. And underneath that trade is something I find a little sad. We're running from the very friction that would have shaped us into who we were trying to become. There's a difference worth naming here, because I think we use these two words like they mean the same thing, and they don't. Identity is what you tell yourself about who you are. Character is what actually shows up when nobody's watching you. When the plan falls apart, when the result doesn't come on schedule, when it would be easier to just quit instead of continuing. Identity can be built in a caption. Character can only be built with time. And that's exactly why this discussion and this distinction matters so much. Motion can hand you a result. It can hand you a good month, a lucky break, a moment that looks like arrival. But motion cannot hand you the character required to actually hold on to that result once you have it. That's what identity and character are really for. They're not the finish line. They're the foundation underneath it. And without them, a result just becomes one more thing that you're scrambling to maintain. Another form of motion. Because you never actually became the kind of person who could carry the result. That's the part I keep coming back to. Meaning isn't just what gets us there. It's what lets us stay there. It's the difference between reaching a goal and becoming someone who can actually hold it. And I saw this in myself recently because, as a lot of you know, I'm building a business right now, and there was a stretch where I kept reaching for the fast version of everything. And I'm still guilty of it. It, looked like me looking into a new platform, a new content strategy, a new business strategy, just hoping that something would just work quicker than the last thing did. And none of it built anything. The only thing that's actually working is the slow thing. The thing that I've stayed with even on the days it didn't feel like enough was happening. And if I'm honest, that's uncomfortable to admit out loud to the public. It's uncomfortable to look at how much of my own life I've spent trying to skip the slow part. But I think that discomfort is actually the whole point. I think it's the first honest thing that happens before anything real gets built. So when I say don't chase motion, chase meaning, this is what I mean by it. Motion might get you the result, but meaning is what builds the person who can actually keep it. That pull toward the fast version of things hasn't left me because I noticed it. I still feel it, like I said. But now when I feel it, I try to ask myself something honest. Am I doing this because it means something to me? Or am I just trying to skip the part that would have made it mean something at all? And here's the part I think that we don't really say enough. Every time we trade the slow, difficult middle of something for the exciting start of something new, we don't just lose momentum, but I feel like we kind of lose ourselves a little bit because we reset. We go back to being someone who starts things instead of becoming someone who finishes them. And our goals were never going to be reached in the jump from one thing to the next thing. They were always going to be reached in the stretch where it stopped feeling exciting and you stayed anyway. That's the part that actually shapes who we are. And this connects to something that we talked about a little bit in episode 11, enjoying the process, right? Because I don't think that we can enjoy something we're constantly trying to rush past. Meaning is what lets us actually be present inside the slow part, instead of white-knuckling our way through it just to get to the end of it. Now, without a clear reason behind what we're doing, it's almost guaranteed to end in frustration, usually right before it would have actually worked. If what we're doing isn't connected to something real inside of us, we will fall short no matter how hard or fast we try. And that statement brings me back to where we started. The necklace that I wear matters to me, not because it's motivational, but because it's honest. When you feel like quitting, remember why you started. That's not a productivity tip. That's a way back to myself. So if there's one thing I hope that you take away from today, it's stop confusing speed for progress. Let the slow parts do what they're supposed to do. The answers were never far away. They were always inside you. We just have to stop running long enough to hear them. Now that's where I'm going to leave it at for today. And thank you for sitting with me through this one. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your support. Stay strong, stay in the forge, and I'll see you next week. That's a wrap on today's episode. If this hit home for you, go read the companion post over on the MindForge blog at warriorxtraining.com. That's where it all starts. Every episode lives inside one of those posts. So if you want the full picture, that's where you go. Follow the show, share it with someone who needs it, and I'll see you back here next week. I'm Caden Floyd. Stay in the forge.